In this lesson, we'll continue our discussion of the systemic circulatory system by taking a look at the blood vessels of the upper extremity. So the main feed of blood vessels into the upper limb is the subclavian artery. If you remember, I'll go back to this picture here, the arch of the aorta had three branches coming off of it. The first one here was the brachiocephalic trunk right there, and that divided into the right subclavian and the right common carotid. Okay, so that's going to be the main feed of blood into the right upper limb. Then the second branch was the left common carotid here. And then the third branch was the left subclavian. So these two blood vessels here, subclavian on the left and the subclavian on the right, they are the major feed of blood into the upper limbs. Now there are a bunch of blood vessels that come off of the subclavian. And first of all, sub means below, and clavian pertains to the clavicle. So you would find these right underneath the clavicle. Like I said, there's a bunch of blood vessels that come off of the subclavian artery. Two of them that I'd like you to know. One we've discussed, and the other one will be a new one. There's a kind of a long, thin blood vessel that runs on the inside of the chest wall, known as the internal thoracic artery, and it's supplying blood to the pericardium and then also onto the anterior chest wall. If you take a look here, let's see, I think I have it labeled for you here. So we're looking on the right side only. Here's going to be the right subclavian. So see this blood vessel right here going down, it runs right along underneath the costal cartilages. This is going to be the internal thoracic artery. And then the second one we had done was the vertebral artery, right? We studied that when we looked at the blood supply to the brain, right? There's other arteries, again, a little bit beyond the scope of this course, right? So the internal thoracic artery, right? Here's one here. Here's one here. And then the vertebral arteries are this first branch right here, this little guy, and that little guy right over there. Okay, now the subclavian artery, as it continues down, it goes through the armpit. And we know that the armpit is called the axilla. So all we're going to do is change the name from subclavian artery into the axillary artery. All right, so we follow this here. All of this is subclavian. Here's the clavicle. All right, all of that would be that. And once we get into this like armpit area right here, all of this is going to be the axillary artery. And before I go back to the notes, once we get down here in the arm, right along the median aspect of the humerus, this is going to be called the brachial artery. Remember, brachial means arm. Okay, so in the arm, the axillary artery becomes the brachial artery. There is a couple branches off the brachial artery. The one pretty big branch is called the deep brachial artery. This kind of goes to the back of the arm, so you can see it coming off right here, and then it goes behind the humerus this way. This is going to be the deep brachial, deep brachial right there. Okay, so subclavian right there, under the clavicle. Once we get to the armpit, right here, all of this is axillary. Once we get down to the arm here, brachial. And then this back one going to the posterior aspect is going to be the deep brachial. Now, a little bit above the elbow, the brachial artery is going to split. One artery is going to follow the radius, the other one is going to follow the ulna. So actually we'll go back this way here for a moment. So we can see right over here, right about the elbow, or sometimes it's a little bit above the elbow, this is going to be the split. This artery here would go to the thumb side, this would be the radial artery. And then this one here going towards the pinky side, that would be the ulnar artery. So you're going to see a division right there. And we kind of come down here a little bit. Right, this would be the following that picture down, radial artery here, and then the ulnar artery right over here. Okay, nice and easy. Okay, so we got the radial and the ulnar arteries. Now, in the palm, the radial and the ulnar arteries, they unite. They form an anastomosis, right? They kind of a connection. So we actually see two arches known as the palmar arches. So notice there's a deep one here, and then there's a superficial one. I think most of the models in the lab show the superficial one. They don't show the deep one, but you'll be able to see the palmar arch. And then extending off of the palmar arches are going to be the arteries that come down into the fingers. And those you're just going to call the digital arteries. Okay? Okay, and that's it for the arteries going into the upper limb. Now, the veins. Very easy. If you understood the arteries going down into the upper limb, the veins are named the same thing going out, but these are what we call deep veins. They run right next to the arteries. Okay, remember we said in a previous lesson, arteries and veins always run together. So right next to the arteries that we just mentioned, we have these deep veins. Right, these run parallel to the arteries and have the same names. So basically, we were going backwards. We could start with, let's say, the digital veins. They become the palmar arch veins. Then they become the either the radial or the ulnar veins. They unite to form the brachial veins. Right, the brachial veins become the axillary veins. Axillary veins become the subclavian veins, and then the subclavian veins become the brachiocephalic vein, and then the two brachiocephalic veins, they unite to form the superior vena cava. So if you know the arteries going towards the fingers, the veins are just the same names but bringing blood the opposite direction. And this is what we would call deep veins. But if you were to take a look at your actually, let's go over this real quick. So here you could actually see here would be like digital veins over here. Digital veins became the palmar arch veins. Right, the palmar arch veins become like either the radial vein or the ulnar vein right here. That becomes right here the brachial vein. All of this. Then the brachial vein becomes the axillary vein, and then the axillary vein becomes the subclavian vein up over here. And then the subclavian vein becomes the brachiocephalic vein. This would be the one on the right. Here's your brachiocephalic vein on the left. And remember, this always forms like a letter V or a peace sign type of thing. And then here's your superior vena cava right over here. So on this picture here, the deeper blue are the deep veins. But notice there's a bunch of lighter blue veins here that they painted representing superficial veins. If you were to just kind of look at your forearm, you'll see some veins in your forearm right in the skin. You could, if you move your skin, you can move those around. Those are superficial veins. So there's three superficial veins that I'd like you to know. Extending on the lateral side of the forearm, and then it just kind of runs up the forearm, up the arm, and then ultimately is going to drain into the subclavian vein. This one is going to be called the cephalic. So watch this on the lateral side of the forearm. Okay, so this one right here, all of this lateral side of the forearm, then it comes up this way, all of this here, that is all going to be, sorry about that, all of this is going to be the cephalic, and then it dumps into the subclavian way over here. Right? So it's a really long vein, all of that. On the inside, before I go back to the notes, this one here is the basilic. All of this. So this is going to be the basilic, comes up this way. But notice it doesn't go quite as high. It actually joins in with the brachial vein over here. It doesn't go up to the axillary or the subclavian. Different books say different things. Kind of, where the end of the brachial vein comes in and the axillary begins is kind of where the basilic ends. So, whoop, wrong way. So the basilic vein goes on the medial side of the forearm and then empties into the brachial vein. Okay, so again, this guy right over here, all of this is the basilic, all of this, like right there, and then it dumps into the brachial vein. Now, there's a connection between the cephalic over here and the basilic on this side. That connection right there kind of crosses the front of our elbow is known as the median cubital vein, right? Median cubital vein. Right? Many times when you get blood drawn, this is one of the veins that they can go into. Right? So these are superficial veins. Right? They also return blood back towards the heart. Right? They're just superficial. They're not next to the arteries. Again, the three I need you to know. All of this here, cephalic, like that. On the medial side, all of this here. On the inside, basilic, and then connecting the two, median cubital vein. All right, so again, on this picture, the lighter colored blue is the superficial veins. The deeper veins are the darker blue. Okay, let's see if we got anything else. Again, it's just another picture of this, right? Thumb side would be the cephalic vein. The pinky side would be the basilic vein. Right? And here's the connection between the two. And this is just the same picture. Okay, so that's our blood vessels of the upper extremity.